where's what I'm doing right now? How does that connect with what I will be doing on the job? And then again, coming up with standards. What are the things that I should be training, or what standards should I be meeting to make those two come together? And I'm not sure that Cooper does that really well, if I'm being honest.
I don't think it has any applicability in that arena, to be honest with you. If you were to just break it down, my sit-up score has never affected my ability in a fight.
Yeah, of all things, I have a lot of things to say about sit-ups, but and how many push-ups you can do. I mean, right. I think there's a measure, some things, some correlation that you can make there. But you just mentioned, I don't care how many push-ups you can do if you're 140 pounds and you got to go hands-on with the 250-pounder dude. Or, it's just it's pretty inconsequential at that point. There's things, so there's skills that are involved with this. All right, that's another thing. So let's go back to the course that you went through, and that you mentioned legalities. You mentioned kind of how long a program would take to get together. What are the things that they're bringing to the table in terms of how to set standards and what those standards should be? So
they pretty much said that the standards were subjective and that your chief or your sheriff can decide whatever standard they can pick, and they had a little chart that was, 1% to 100%. And they had a whole, set of scores in between. And they said, look, your chief or your sheriff can decide at any point, they can decide what percentage is passing for them. They just need to decide which one it is. So it'd be a real subjective thing. If you had a real go-getter sheriff, maybe they pick a higher score. If you had a real low-performing chief, maybe they pick a lower score. Who knows? But it was as simple as just that, lead officer, that lead, chief or sheriff needs to decide what it's going to be.
And this was based on Cooper?
No, this was based on Fit Force had their own standards, very similar. Yeah, so it was very similar to Cooper. There were some differences, and like we discussed earlier, I believe their push-ups and sit-ups were unbroken. So It was how many can you do straight, not in 2 minutes. I think it was a 2-minute time cap, but it was when you stopped, it was over. There was no sagging in the middle, arch in the back, resting. There was none of that.
No stopping at the top to hold, correct, to then crank out 2 more, to then stop, to then crank out 2 more, that kind of thing.
Right.
Under the time limit that you had to do this in.
Correct. And then there was a shuttle run, which debate its applicability. I'm not sure. I'm big on mobility and agility. Do I think a shuttle run is the best measurement for that? I don't know. Maybe not, but debatable. They did a 300-meter sprint similar to Cooper and the 1.5-mile run.
Okay. So there was nothing in there specific to one of the things you said was really important, which is the strength piece. Was that ever talked about at all?
We discussed it, and they even had us make mock-up training programs and strength training programs, but as an exercise, but it didn't apply to the test. So I actually, for myself as a student, I wasn't sure what the desired end state was. I was like, what are you trying to teach me? How to make a program? Or is there actually some kind of applicability towards the test? But it turned out there wasn't.
And therein lies the problem, right? Again, therein lies the problem is we're not making connection with the thing. It's more like, how do we institute the things that have already been instituted with a little bit of nuance? Again, unbroken push-ups as being one of those things, and maybe a little bit of a different time standard on a shuttle run or a 1.5-mile run. But we really haven't changed much, and we haven't addressed root issues, which are strength matters, right? And what do you get from strength training? It's not just so that you can go hands-on with the bigger, more stronger person. What strength brings to the table in terms of resiliency, and your ability to do the things. Like strength is kind of the platform that all things are going to be built on. So, and the movement piece, which you said are two very important things. And I would say if I had to pick two of the most important things, would be strength and your ability to move. So movement. And those things that's a very high level statement, and you can obviously dig down into a lot of areas. But if you just focus on those two things, the programming piece and the standards that you could probably pick to make sure that people were getting better at those things and be measurably better, and then the connection points that you can make about how this makes you better in all things. Again, your ability to recover from your workouts, your ability to recover from an incident, your ability to recover from day to day, a long week at work, whatever your specific job tasks are. I think those things are applicable across the board. Agreed or disagreed?
No, absolutely. And I have a bunch of friends. One thing that we talked about all the time was, back injuries are very common in law enforcement. Mm-hmm. And I would tell guys, I say, hey, look, weak backs get injured. You have to train your core. You have to train your back. It's proven, and we could debate this all day, but it's proven the stronger your back is, the less likely you are to get injured. unless you're doing something stupid, and then yes, you can get injured. But, being sedentary, not training any type of core strength or just back strength. And then personally, I believe it has an absolute direct correlation to, increase in back injuries.
Yeah, I mean, back injuries are super common across the board, whether inside law enforcement or not inside. I think it's still 1 in 5 Americans has a low back issue. It's likely going to happen, but there's a higher potential for that to happen. Obviously, if you lack strength and lack mobility,
Mhm.
right, or your ability to move, and these things come up usually in the most common things. It's not an incident, that happens that creates or that where the back injury shows up or the back problem. Let's just say shows up. It's in the everyday stuff that they're doing, and one day they got the trunk of the car open. They reach over to pick up, I don't know, the med bag, the lunch box, whatever it happens to be, or they drop their keys. They bend over, rotate, reach, and they stand up, and it's
Mhm.
like they quote unquote throw their back out. Well,
Mhm.
why did that happen? It wasn't because you were in that foot pursuit that ended in the wrestling match, for at the end of that thing. It was something basic, and that's telling, and that's how most humans get hurt. And I think it's important to understand, or for people to get through their heads, that these are just humans, and they all need the basic same stuff. But when it comes to the standards piece, like in law enforcement, obviously, when you talk about officer involved incidents and whatever those happen to be, and you've outlined a couple of what those might look and feel like that stuff changes. And the level of strength that you have to have, the level of resiliency that you have to have just to make it through the day, right, obviously gets amplified for these types of things. And it also is proven that the fitter officers are less likely to get injured in general.
Mhm.
And it's also been proven statistically that so do the people that you're detaining, right? There's less injuries when that officer is more physically fit and more skilled with the hands-on piece of the job. So again, it makes sense for everybody for officers to be more fit.